Imagine jumping into a new online world,
Right.
right? But instead of being stuck in one role, you can actually forge your own path, adapt, on the fly. Today we're doing a deep dive into a game that promises exactly that kind of freedom.
Yeah, we're talking about Lord 9. It's an open-world MMORPG, and it's been making some serious waves, especially after it launched very successfully over in South Korea. We're going to unpack its big innovation, this infinite class system, plus its graphics, which are pretty ambitious, and just generally what makes it stand out in, let's be honest, a very crowded genre.
Absolutely. And our mission here is really to cut through the hype, give you the essential insights. Does Lord 9 actually deliver on what it's promising? To figure that out, we've looked at a whole bunch of stuff, streamer reviews, official announcements from the publisher, Smilegate Megaport, some industry analysis, of course, what players themselves are saying, trying to get the full picture.
Okay, so let's kick things off with first impressions, the rollout. Lord 9, like we said, open world MMORPG, developed by NX3 Games, published by Smilegate Megaport. And that publisher name, Smilegate, probably rings a bell for some people. They're behind Lost Ark, which is, a pretty big global title.
Right. And Lord 9 definitely made an entrance. It launched in South Korea, July 2024?
Yep, July 2024.
And it just shot up the charts. Hit #1 in sales on both Apple's App Store and Google Play in 6 days?
6 days flat, which is incredibly fast, especially in a market as competitive as South Korea. Really quite something.
Yeah, that kind of speed is pretty rare.
For sure. And it didn't stop there. It picked up awards too. Best Game at the Korea Game Awards 2024 and Best MMORPG from Sensor Tower's APAC Awards. Pretty prestigious stuff.
Okay, so strong start domestically. What about the rest of us?
Well, good news on that front. Smilegate Megaport has already confirmed plans for a global server launch. They're targeting Q3 2025.
Q3 2025. Okay, so something to look forward to. And a big part of that global appeal, I imagine, is the cross-platform play.
Definitely. That's a major highlight. You can play it seamlessly across PC, iOS, and Android. Jump between devices.
It feels almost essential now, doesn't it? For any big MMO aiming for a global audience, that kind of accessibility.
Oh, absolutely. It's moved beyond just being a nice-to-have. It's practically a requirement to reach the widest audience, cater to how people actually play games these days, playing on the go, then settling in on PC later. It's a huge advantage.
Okay, so let's get into the real meat of it. The thing that's supposed to make Lord 9 truly different, this infinite class system. They're really pushing this idea of unprecedented freedom in how you build your character. But what does that actually look like when you start playing? If there's no fixed class, how do you even begin?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. So instead of picking, say, warrior or mage at the start, you just choose a male or female character model. That's it. Your class, quote unquote, is defined purely by the weapon you're holding. And here's the cool part. You can switch between 8 different weapon types whenever you want.
8 types, like what?
You've got sword and shield, staff, greatsword, spear, dual swords, bow, crossbow, and hammer or mace. A pretty standard but comprehensive fantasy lineup.
Okay, but the key is the switching, right? You said whenever you want. Does that mean even in the middle of combat?
Exactly. Real-time swapping. During a fight, you can literally change your weapon and your entire active skill set changes with it instantly.
Whoa, okay, that sounds potentially game-changing for strategy. So you could be fighting a boss, realize your melee approach isn't working.
And just, boom, switch to a staff for ranged magic, or maybe swap to a bow to kite, or a shield to tank for a bit. It allows for incredibly dynamic shifts.
How many different combinations does that actually lead to?
Well, the system allows for something like over 65 unique sort of class profiles based on weapon and skill combos. Plus, there are over 60 ability tags you can mix and match. So the potential for personalized, powerful builds is just huge. Really lets you adapt to anything PvE or PvP.
Okay. But there's a catch, right? I read something about class levels. It's not completely freeform.
Right, good point. While you can learn skills for every weapon type, each weapon has its own class level.
Yep.
So say you've mastered the bow, got it to a high level. If you suddenly decide to pick up a greatsword...
I'm basically starting from scratch with that weapon. Level 1 greatsword skill.
Pretty much. You have to level up your proficiency with each weapon type individually. It encourages you to maybe specialize or at least dedicate time to mastering different styles rather than just flipping constantly without consequence.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's freedom, but with a layer of commitment needed for mastery. It's not just press button, become expert mage.
Exactly. It pushes player choice, lets you tailor your growth, your skills, your gear to how you want to play. but it rewards dedication to specific playstyles, too. It's quite a different philosophy from the traditional pick your class and stick with it model.
Right. Now, a game with that kind of dynamic combat, you expect it to look good. Let's talk visuals and performance. Lord 9 uses the Unity engine, apparently with some advanced stuff like 3D photo scanning and motion capture. They're aiming for high-quality 3D graphics.
Yeah, and early reports, from people playing the Korean version mentioned the opening cutscenes are really impressive. A very grand, visually rich feel overall. Some players have even compared the look to games like Black Desert, which is known for its graphics.
High praise.
Yeah.
But I also heard about a potential issue, something about the camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's been a significant point of feedback. Apparently, the game has a locked camera angle. Players can't zoom in or out freely.
A locked camera. In a modern open-world MMO, that seems odd. Why would they do that?
It's definitely a curious choice, maybe for performance optimization across devices, or perhaps a specific design vision. But yeah, some players have found it restrictive, especially for exploration or getting a good tactical overview in fights.
Yeah, I can see how that would feel limiting if you're used to having full camera control. It's definitely something that stood out in early player reactions.
It certainly sparked a lot of discussion, yeah. A potential drawback for some, for sure.
Okay, so visuals are impressive, but maybe with that camera caveat. Let's shift to the underlying systems, the gameplay mechanics, the economy. These are crucial for long-term engagement in an MMO. It's got an open-world structure, standard MMO stuff, and it includes an auto-questing system.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common now, especially for games with mobile crossplay. Offers convenience for grinding or when you're multitasking.
But the combat isn't fully automated, right? You mentioned skill timing and weapon swapping.
Exactly. The auto system handles the running around, maybe basic attacks, but effective combat, especially against tougher enemies or in PvP, requires manual control, good timing, and using that weapon swapping strategically.
And the stats are a bit unusual too, you said. STR affecting all damage.
Yeah, the stat system is interesting. Strength, STR, boosts all damage, melee and ranged. Dexterity, DEX, is for hit rate and crit chance.
Yeah.
And then luck, LUK, buffs your defense and ignore capabilities like ignoring some enemy defense.
So STR boosting magic damage too, that really throws traditional builds out the window.
Yeah.
You can make some very unconventional characters, a super strong mage, a lucky tank.
Precisely. It forces you to think differently about stat allocation, find maybe non-obvious synergies. It adds another layer of customization.
What about progression beyond combat? Anything else unique?
Well, there's this monster mastery system. It's kind of like a bestiary you fill out yourself. You have to actually defeat specific monsters multiple times to unlock all their details, stats, weaknesses, lore, etc.
Well, that's kind of neat, like old school RPGs.
Yeah.
Gives you a reason to actually learn about the creatures you're fighting, not just see them as XP bags. Adds a bit of discovery.
Yeah, exactly. Now, onto the economy. This is another area where they seem to be aiming high. They want a robust, player-driven economy. Inside the game, that means things like one-to-one item trading between players and a central marketplace. Pretty standard, but important.
Okay, but wasn't there something more radical about trading outside the game?
Ah, yes. This is fascinating. They're allowing certain high-value in-game assets to be exchanged outside the game itself.
Game items outside the game, officially sanctioned. That is bold. That gets into tricky territory with real money trading digital ownership. How are they managing that?
It seems they're leaning on Line Next as a trusted third party to handle it securely. It definitely taps into that growing trend of true digital asset ownership, potentially blurring lines between the game economy and a real-world value.
It's ambitious. Could set a precedent if they pull it off securely, but it also sounds like it carries significant risks if things go wrong. Player trust would be paramount.
Absolutely critical. Which brings us to monetization, specifically loot boxes or gacha systems.
Right. Always a sensitive topic in MMOs. What's the official line versus what players are seeing?
So the developers have stated there's only one type of lottery, their term for gacha, and that most important gear, equipment, is earned through playing, not buying.
But
Early player reports from the Korean version mention gacha elements that seem to offer more than just cosmetics. Things like stat boosts, attack speed, casting speed, movement speed, potentially obtainable through these randomized systems.
Okay, so maybe a bit of a disconnect there between the gear is earned message and potentially performance-affecting boosts being in the gacha. that could be a sticking point for some players?
It certainly could. That kind of potential pay-for advantage, even if indirect via stats, is often contentious in competitive games like MMOs. It's something potential players will be watching closely.
Definitely. Okay, finally, let's touch on the story. Beyond all the systems, what's the world actually about? What's our purpose there?
Well, it's a high fantasy setting. The premise is that the world was ruled by 9 powerful lords, but their reign has collapsed into war and betrayal. Standard epic fantasy conflict setup.
And where do we, the players, fit in?
You are apparently destined to become the 10th lord. Your goal is to rise up, navigate this chaos, and ultimately unite the fractured lands under your leadership.
Become the 10th Lord. Okay, ambitious goal.
Yeah, and they're presenting the storyline with, high-quality cinematic cutscenes, trying to make it feel epic and give your character a real central role in how the world's history unfolds.
All right, so let's try and synthesize this. Lore 9 is definitely swinging for the fences. You've got this highly ambitious, infinite class system promising incredible freedom.
Paired with high-end graphics, even with that camera question mark, and an economy that's trying some genuinely innovative, if potentially risky things with player trading.
It's huge success right out of the gate in Korea, and the upcoming global launch certainly make it a major title to keep an eye on, even with those early concerns about the camera or the exact nature of the gacha.
I think the core thing here is player agency. Lord 9 seems to be fundamentally built around giving you, the player, more control over your combat style, maybe even over the value of your in-game items. It's asking you to actively shape your experience.
So the big question for you to think about is this. Given Lore 9's focus on player choice in classes and combat, maybe even in its economy, how could a game like this actually influence the future of MMORPGs? As it rolls out globally, what new levels of freedom and agency might it unlock for you?